real wow factors. What are those in the 2022 budget unveiled yesterday? Will it help Malaysia sail through the COVID-19 storm? I'm Muhammad Ahmad Hamdan and this is Money Matters. Welcome and thanks for joining us on TV3's flagship business program, Money Matters. Today we're joined by Dr. Shankaran Nambia, who is the head of research of the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIER. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for having me on the show.
Great. Now, 2 days prior to the tabling of the 2022 budget, the Prime Minister actually remarked that the budget would come with wow factors that would actually benefit everyone in the big Malaysian family. To start off, I'd like to start off by asking you to describe briefly about what do you make of this 2022 budget?
I think wow it's an interesting expression. I suppose it conveys wonderment, and it could be wonderment at something at extreme stupidity, beauty. Something that you hadn't anticipated. I don't think there's any, definitely there's no extreme stupidity in the budget.
Great.
But what certainly does come to mind is I think, if one had to characterize the budget, I think it's the breadth that it has, the attempt to bring in different segments of the population to cater to the needs of the different sectors. And I think these are the characteristics that make the budget stand out. It could be characterized as a budget that kind of spreads too thin, tries to cover too much. But I think given these circumstances, that's just what you need.
Right. It is also the biggest budget in Malaysia's history.
Yes.
Now, the allocated figure is 322.1 billion ringgit. With this record high number, what would be the concerns? Because the finance minister said that the figure can actually accommodate the budget because the federal revenue next year is expected to come in at 234 billion ringgit. And the finance minister further said that this figure can potentially rise to 240 billion ringgit. So there is nothing to worry about from this perspective. The question is the revenue projection realistic with tax largely expected to be the main contributor?
I think it's an indication of the extent of confidence that the finance minister has on the economy going forward. And it's perhaps not entirely misplaced. Even conservative estimates put growth in 2022 at something like 5 to 6%. It is possible that it touched 6.5%.
Okay.
And with growth figures of that sort, you would see...
That sounds promising.
Yeah, it does. It is. And you already are starting to see industry picking up, the footfalls in malls, etc., picking up. Tourism sector is probably set to see a return, probably a slow, gradual return, but a return nonetheless, which I suppose would improve as the year progresses, as we go into 2022. So I think it is, although at first glance it's kind of surprising and it seems a little bit hard to stomach. But
because
I think
of the size of the allocation.
Yes, absolutely.
This year, we already, the budget, this year, 2021 budget, was thought to be the largest budget ever.
Yes.
And then, did you actually expect that the 2022 budget was going to be, much bigger than this year's budget?
It had to be. I mean, given the
So that's within the MIR's expectation.
I think I'd rather speak for myself than for the Institute. I don't think there perhaps might be some areas where we have different, my personal views might be different from the Institute's. But I think the Institute, too, is fairly optimistic about the way the economy is going to head going into 2022.
Right. Talking about the government's fiscal position, the finance minister, in unveiling the 2022 budget, said that despite the increased spending, the government's budget deficit is expected to narrow to 6% from 6.5% this year. How realistic is this target?
I think it's not unreasonable.
It's not a stretch.
No, it isn't. Because you see the economy improving, and as it improves, your tax revenue would probably start to come in. And there are different sources of revenue that have been outlined in the fiscal outlook.
But there are also, at the same time, tax incentives, which are going to cost the government to lose some sort of revenue sources.
There would be, but I suspect on balance, and given the favorable state of the price of oil and the kind of dividends that you could expect from Petronas, I don't think it's too much of a stretch.
Okay, Dr. Nambiar.
And also remember that there are a couple of, or at least there is one interesting tax, kind of tax that is going to be introduced. So I think with this entire package, you might see yourself coming through reasonably well.
Great. Now, we're going to take a short breather to make way for the commercial break. We're off for a quick break, but in the meantime, let us know your thoughts on the discussion on Twitter, and stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us on Money Matters as we speak with Dr. Shankaran Nambia, Head of Research of the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIR. Now, Dr. Nambia, in terms of allocation to the respective ministries in the 2022 budget, did you expect education to get the biggest slice of the pie and the healthcare comes second?
I would have preferred if it had been the other way around. I think healthcare should have gotten first place. It's a service that has which has not kept up with the times, with the growing population, and I think in particular public healthcare it is good, but I think it could be a lot better. And the COVID situation showed the fault lines in the public healthcare system. So there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of, there is of course excess, but I think a lot more can be done in terms of the speed of delivery of services, etc. And I think that's why I think that should have deserved the health.
Well, what about education? Do you think it deserved that the biggest slice of the pie? It does deserve
attention, but I would see the kind of incentives, etc., going out to the education sector as it should have been more. It is more of a structural problem, and it is a long-standing issue. It deserves attention over a longer period, and some of the areas that were touched on are, I think, worthy. For instance, renovations, etc. That there is probably a need to improve the hardware, and it also gives opportunities for contractors, etc., etc. And that perhaps is a good thing. Something like the food that is being given. I think that's something that should be institutionalized. That's something that shouldn't depend from budget to budget. It's something that should go on.
Great.
I'm not so sure about the tablets that are going out to undergraduates. They are true, they need tablets, but I think these tablets perhaps should have been
not
given.
Not a priority, perhaps.
No, it should have been given a year back, 2 years back.
Sure. Okay. 9.6 million people will benefit from the one-off Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia announced yesterday, and this will cost the government 8.2 billion ringgit. Besides consistent direct cash aid, what other approaches can be taken to assist the rakyat?
I have no problem with this
cash aid.
With cash aid, it gets criticized a lot, but I think under circumstances such as this, this is perhaps the fastest way of filling the gaps, the crevices. There are times when you need a longer approach, something that where you teach people, as they say, to fish, but this is a case where you need to apply Band-Aid. And I'm not at all in disagreement with it.
Sure.
Whether the amount that's given out is sufficient, that's a different question. But then there are so many areas to attend to, and I suppose lots of people would be complaining that it's good but not enough.
Okay. Now, the Finance Minister said that the government intends to introduce the Fiscal Responsibility Act next year. The government is conducting a public expenditure review in collaboration with the World Bank. How do you think such moves will improve governance, accountability and transparency, taking into account the previous day's audit report, which revealed that 620 million in losses were recorded due to financial management non-compliance at federal ministries and departments. To what extent can the Fiscal Responsibility Act and Public Expenditure Review ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending?
I think the Malaysian government doesn't need the World Bank or the IMF or any international organization to teach it about governance and what needs to be done. Anyway, the Public Expenditure Review and the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Is that
the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Yeah,
right,
you're right.
Right. These look at rules, revenue rules, expenditure rules, etc., etc.
Governance, basically.
Yes, but the problem always does not rest at the macro level. It's what happens at the level of procurement that often tends to be a problem. And the Auditor General's report, the reports have been laying out concerns, and these are not new concerns. Years back, the Auditor General had mentioned that a pair of scissors was priced at, I don't know, 50 ringgit and stuff of this sort. So these are not new problems. They are old. It's a question of political will.
Right. I just also want to ask you very quickly on the EPF employees' contribution rate that was reduced to 9% in 2020 will remain until June next year under the 2022 budget. Understandably, this allows the people to have more disposable cash, which will in turn stimulate the economy. In the short term, though, however, the narrative changes when we look at it from the long-term perspective. According to the EPF CEO, the pandemic has led to a significant drop in the percentage of members meeting the basic savings threshold of 240,000 ringgit at age 55, from 36% pre-pandemic, which was already low, down to currently at 27% due to COVID-19 related withdrawals. Do you find this worrying, or is it another problem, a problem for another day?
I don't think it's a problem for another day. It's a problem that ought to have been addressed many days ago. This is something that has come out years back, that people on retirement finish off their EPF savings in about 2 years, 3 years or so. And understandably, during COVID, when they are cash-strapped, they would have had to dip into the EPF savings. Household debt has also been notoriously high. It has touched, I think, something like 90%. And it now is slightly below 90%. I think something like 87 or so percent. So it is a problem which has to be addressed. And it probably cannot be addressed immediately, but it is something that we have to take very seriously.
Because it seems like Malaysia is probably the only country that allows withdrawals from retirement savings.
It's not a good thing. It's unfortunate that that has had to happen. But I think, given the circumstances,
it's justified.
I suppose it is. But I think we need to find a structural solution, something long-standing. We don't have social safety nets. So when people don't have money, what do? They have to draw on the EPF funds. Savings. And that means taking out from money that you would need when you are 55, 60.
Understood. Now, we're going to go for another short commercial break, so do hold that thought. We're off for another quick break. In the meantime, let the discussion and Twitter, and stay tuned. Don't go away. Welcome back to Money Matters as we speak with MIER Head of Research, Dr. Shankaran Nambia. Doctor, the prosperity tax included in the 2022 budget, introduced rather in the 2022 budget yesterday, do you think it will have any impact on the investment climate for companies and businesses in general in Malaysia, especially in trying to attract more investments into the country? And also, is the tax better than the previously much talked about windfall tax? Because from what I understand, both are one-off taxes, aren't they?
I mean, the justification that Topa gave for his preference for this tax, the prosperity tax, was that in essence, I think what he was trying to say...
It's not targeted at specific industries.
So you're not punishing a couple of industries, you're punishing a lot more.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Once again, under the circumstances, what do? You have a choice of borrowing, and if you want to avoid borrowing, then you have to
increase revenue through
taxes. And I suppose you have to, quite obviously, quite naturally, you'd have to look at those who are earning above a certain bracket. So it's not something that the markets are going to like. It's definitely going to create ripples. But I think if you take a whole-of-nation approach, I suppose this is something that, once again, it's a kind of a bitter pill that will have to be swallowed for this period. Perhaps it might have been useful if the government could have specified how exactly the funds that come from this prosperity tax are going to be used, and that would communicate the urgency or the necessity for that tax.
But do you think it will have any impact on the investment climate in the country? Is this only unique to Malaysia to have these kind of one-off taxes? Because that could probably hinder foreign investments from coming into Malaysia and invest in Malaysia when they can actually have a business operation elsewhere outside of Malaysia which does not have these one-off taxes?
I think it's something that we have to look at over a longer time range. Given the fact that there are not adequate sources of revenue, and we have sort of been forced into a corner, I think that will have to be appreciated. But I take your point that the markets are probably not going to take very kindly to it. You probably might see some reaction on the KLCI. And what we therefore have to do would be to devise measures, strategies to compensate for this. So there have to be, you have to put in place a set of measures that would sort of compensate for the kind of loss that foreign investors, for instance, might have to face. You have to offer a more attractive climate to foreign investors.
It's interesting that you mentioned KLCI. How do you think, in general, how do you think the local stock market is going to react to this 2022 budget, which it did not have that much time to react to the budget on Friday because it was stable quite close to the closing bell. So this Monday, how do you think the local stock market is going to move? Like, which direction do you think it's going
I think in the initial hours, you probably might see a small dip.
It closed in the red on Friday.
Okay, so I suppose sentiments are not likely to be very positive as the market opens. But I think that there are going to be other factors that might reignite the market. And I think it is important. I mean, it is important that the nation as a whole recover. And I think that I would like to think that that has been the focus of the Minister of Finance. And I'm quite sure, coming as he does from the banking industry, he probably is sensitive to the kind of ripples it would cause in markets. But I would like to think that on balance, he thinks that this is a good move.
Very interesting. Dr. Shankaran, unfortunately, that's all the time we have on this episode of Money Matters. We really appreciate your time and insights shared on this program. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. It was an absolute pleasure. It was fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, that's all the time we have for the program this week. To our viewers, we'll be back next week, same day and same time. So do join us for more money insights that matter. I'm Muhammad Ahmad Hamdan. Thanks for watching and take care.